Hey, all my Capricorn friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your August 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I talk about Capricorn, I'm talking about Capricorn as being the first house, Capricorn rising and dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Capricorn sun and Capricorn moon. If you have 3 or more personal planets in the sign of Capricorn, this video is also for you. When I refer to a day and a time, it is based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. And the wheel will change as we move throughout the month, so I'll be verbally telling you which house this is applicable for you. We start off with Mercury stationing to go retrograde. Mercury is going to go retrograde from August 4th until August 28th. It will go from 4 degrees of Virgo all the way back to 21 degrees of Leo. Virgo is Capricorn's 9th house, and Leo is Virgo's 8th house. So there's going to be a revisit of your belief systems, of the power and control that others have over you, of your own personal creativity and what you're building, and your ideologies. Pluto has been going through your first house. We see Pluto down here on the cusp of your first and second house, retrograde, about to go into the last degrees of Capricorn. We will experience that in September. And this is where Pluto will revisit and get those cobwebs out and just really take another look at what is old and antiquated and is no longer working in your projection of yourself, in who you think you are. Naturally, the Virgo energy complements the Capricorn energy. You're both earth signs, you trine each other. So what I'm feeling is that this is going to be some sort of revisit of your belief system. Now, back in July, we have a series of Mercury, Venus, and the moon are all coming into what I've been calling a transit yod with Pluto and Saturn. A yod is an aspect that is called the finger of God. It is a focal point. The planet at the apex is really being examined, and the 2 planets that are in quincunx represent sort of the legs of the situation. We saw at the end of July, Mercury become the apex of Pluto and Saturn. Saturn is transiting the Pisces energy, which is your 3rd house, which represents how you think and how you speak and how you interact with other people, how it can represent your childhood experience. It represents our teammates, our workmates, our roadways. We see Pluto again on the cusp of your 1st and 2nd house, of your sense of self and your skills and your confidence and your using your talents. And that apex was really focusing in on the everyday thoughts, the mercurial dynamics of what is required of us in our everyday activities and our self-talk. The reason I bring this up is because Mercury is going to retrograde, and this yod is going to happen for a 2nd time. Now, Venus is going to go into this yod at almost the same time. It's very interesting. Mercury will retrograde on the 4th. Venus will move into Virgo, where she is in fall. This is where she's in the furthest place of her exaltation. And Mercury is not only I think I said this, but if I didn't, Mercury is already in its rulership in Virgo, but it's also exalted there. So Mercury is very, very powerful here. And we're going to see this focal point of our confidence and of how we make our money and how we think about our money and how we're running our everyday lives very much in play, with Pluto bubbling up the underbelly of whatever's holding me back, whatever fears I might have, whatever power and control others have over me. And and Neptune is going to very much represent sort of this opportunity to really go into a spiritual dynamic of using your spiritual connection. Ninth house rules the connection to the angelic realm. So your daily practices of affirming the things that you want, the experiences, the material successes that you want in an affirmative way that puts it in the present moment will be incredibly powerful. But before that gets implemented, there's going to be this focus on it that feels a little bit challenging. And that is because during this whole time, through the month of August, we will feel Jupiter in a square and a half to Pluto and in a square to Saturn. This is playing around like music in the background of our lives throughout the whole month. Revisiting histories and authority and government. Saturn is your ruling planet. Saturn is known as, an authority figure, someone who is a leader, somebody who operates out of duty and obligation and responsibility, not really being very emotional about it. And yet here Saturn is going through a journey in Pisces where Saturn is learning to make his platform for building his spiritual connection through his communication, through his daily practices. And yet we're seeing a conflict here. And the conflict is playing around because the community, the Gemini energy, which represents your sixth house of work, there's a growing conjunction between Mars and Jupiter, which is inflaming a situation. It's inflaming my beliefs. It's inflaming my expansion. And if it's being thwarted, which it could be by Saturn, that this makes this even more aggravating. And Pluto is making this aspect that feels like, so a square is a box that we can see. It's a tension, it feels obvious, but when it's a square and a half, there's an element to it that is unseen. And that would refer to the psychological dynamic that Pluto represents for you. Pluto somehow playing to fear, playing to limitation, playing to the restriction that Saturn is aggravating as it's squaring your belief system. So this is, again, throughout the whole month, and Jupiter and Saturn will come into an exact square. And this is not changing much at all throughout. Pluto will not move into Capricorn, your first house, to the 29th degree until September 1st. So this will go on throughout the month pretty much. Okay, now we're going to move to the 4th, which is a really big day in the sense that we have a new moon in Leo, and that is happening at 4:13 a.m. Pacific time. Leo is your 8th house of other people's money, of a big finance house. It is a house where you create, where you express yourself. It's a house that offers you an opportunity to have the courage to follow your heart. It's also a house where we see great transformation, oftentimes through a bit of trauma. And while that's not necessarily always fun, on the other side of it, we can understand how much benefit was gained. For instance, sometimes we might go through a breakup or the dissolution of a partnership of some kind, and yet the new 2.0 version of that partnership could be so much better because of what we've gained from the first time around. But yet we will mourn that first loss as if it is the only opportunity. So here we have the sun and the moon at the very darkest phase of the moon, planting seeds in faith. And this is at the 12th degree. The 12th degree is a Piscean degree, which is also your 3rd house. So here, this is like an opportunity to use your head to go into your heart, asking yourself your questions. Am I only basing what is possible on what I can see, or am I basing it on what I can feel? This is supported, this new moon, by a sextile to Jupiter and a loose sextile to Mars. But this growing conjunction, I think, is going to bring a lot of outside neighborhood nonsense and frustration. And so we'll be tasked to sort of have an awareness of the environment so that we can drive through it with more ease or with more awareness. At the same time as this moon, Mercury recently was just in this position. I was talking about it a minute ago. Now we see Venus. She is at the apex of the yod, the transit yod. A yod is where one planet is the focal point, and then the two planets connecting are in a quincunx. For me, a quincunx is, again, a sort of a blind spot. It's this foggy place where I can't really see what's around the bend. It's tense. I have to call upon senses other than my earthly senses. Now, the 29th degree at the time of the full moon is the star Regulus, the royal star Regulus. This is very powerful because the focal point here, as Venus is about to go into her fall, she's going to go into a place where she becomes practical and she starts to analyze and put in processes and really, knuckle down. But here she has to own her own regalness. She gets to own it. She gets to say, what I want is important. Again, this is your 8th house of transformation moving into your 9th house, which is a business house, which could broaden your reach, with the idea that Jupiter rules business. Again, publishing, branding, marketing, and everything we do these days has influence on others, even the comments we make to other people's content. We do feel a square to Uranus. Uranus is in your 5th house of self-expression. It's a house where we conceive our ideas and then we put them out on a stage for other people to see. And there could potentially be some trepidation about that. It's also a house where children are conceived in the 5th house. The 5th house is a house where our high school experience, young love, romantic love. Now we overlay this Taurus energy of wanting to feel something solid and secure, and being willing to go through the experience that creates that security, that sense of being able to, I don't want to say predict, but depend maybe on a certain type of reaction. And here's Uranus mucking that up with its unexpected turn left when I was supposed to turn right energy. So there's a little square going on there. And yet, at the same time, I think Mercury standing in the skies in exaltation and in rulership can connect very well with the Chiron aspect of maybe this is an opportunity for me to start to individualize and to discern the information that I'm experiencing versus just taking it in and doing what is expected of me in the way of being responsible, dutiful, and being a leader. That's 4:13 in the morning. We haven't even gotten to later in the day, because later in the day, we'll see that Mercury has gone retrograde. Again, that will retrograde until the 28th of the month. So all of August is dominated by that review, that even resting from all the I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go to 12 p.m. I meant to go to 10 p.m. Sorry, because it's later in the day that we see both Venus has moved into Virgo here. We see her now at the apex, exact 0 degree to Pluto, really bringing up something where there's, when I say bringing it up, I don't feel like it's very conscious. I feel like it's laying underneath the surface of my consciousness, like a dream that you can sort of remember, but you don't remember the details. And this is a psychological imprint of, you don't understand, I have to do that. This would be Capricorn, how it would feel. You don't understand. I have to do that. I have no choice. And yet there still is choice. So Venus is feeling that, and Mercury is about to retrograde over that point again in a couple of days. So this is very powerful. Now, at the same time, we have Mars growing into a tighter and tighter conjunction with Jupiter. Now, I really think that this is going to be a polarizing dynamic. We see that Mars is the god of war, and Mars spent 7 months in Gemini between 2022 and 2023, really examining how he communicates, how he interacts. Is he inspiring, or is he just blunt and harsh and pushy? And this is going to be revisited. And I think for those standing in awareness that your new belief system or the new concepts or the new philosophies that you have been, nurturing over the last 2 years would be demonstrated here, but the outside world, the community could be going bonkers. We in the United States are in an election year. When we go to the next, when I go to the next aspects, you'll see that I really think that the community outside, your neighbors, how people think and their belief system, they're going to want to fight for them. And if they're differing from you, that could be challenging depending upon how you maneuver the situation, because the month becomes more tense. We go from sort of this square and a half underbelly, this yod that's sort of messing with me because I don't really connect with like, what is the problem? I just feel unsettled. And I really think that Venus's quincunx to Neptune is very important because she can't see in that moment that it's connecting with her divinity within that is going to help her to transform this period of time. So this is all being offered to you to revisit some of your old belief systems, and are they still applicable? Is Capricorn following their heart? Because that's the big transformation that Pluto has been working through Capricorn for its whole transit. And now this last revisit is going into these pivotal degrees, 29th degree in September. That reduces down to an 11, which is the master number of thought. Then we go to the 28th degree, which is also a number that reduces down to a 1. And then we have this commonality of the Leo degree, 29, the 28th degree of Cancer, following my heart, trusting my inner knowing. And then it's going to go, I think, all the way back to 27. And that'll be a re-examination of the human mind and how it runs amok. It has its own operating system, and we infuse our intention, we infuse our conscious thought, but given it runs on its own. And sometimes that helps, and sometimes that's really annoying. All right, Capricorn, let's go back, or let's go now to, I'm going to go back to the 12 p.m. But we're going to go to the 14th, because what I was just talking about is basically running through these next week and a half or so. And this is where I think it gets super intense. Now we see Mercury is revisiting the yod. It is in retrograde. So it's really something that is coming back up. Now it's coming clearer. Somehow, even though that we have the quincunxes, there's a bit of clarity coming. And I don't know how exactly that's going to play out for you. It feels like an epiphany potentially. We see this is a very powerful moment here because we now have Jupiter and Mars in an exact conjunction. And that conjunction is in your house of work, of health, of mental stress, and it's opposing the moon. The moon at this time is in your 12th house, the house of feeling invisible. And if you have, been part of a team or part of a group and your efforts are not being applauded, this might be really a tense time. And also, if you've not been paying attention to your own personal need for rest and relaxation and rejuvenation, because we've got two very powerful T-squares on this day as well. We have Saturn as the focal point of a T-square between Jupiter and Mars. And this isn't exact yet, but you can already feel the tension. Then we see that Jupiter and Mars are in an opposition to the moon. The line isn't being shown right now. So there's one. And the opposition here to Venus creates a second, because Venus is in square to these two planets, Mars and Jupiter, and Mars and Jupiter are in square to Saturn. So this is really, it's very, our belief system, what we want, our value, our expansion. We can even say that, we could find out that some moves have been made within our government, such as our judicial system, the different branches being stacked up in their own particular ways. It's really a very, very polarizing and potentially challenging, I want to say volatile time. We still have Uranus here making a square to Mercury, so there could be unexpected challenges where people just pop off. And again, I keep saying again, I apologize for that. We're having the Democratic National Convention at this time, somewhere in the middle of August. I think it's the 14th. I don't know if the day's been announced just yet. And I think this is going to contribute to this exasperation or the potentials for really wanting to fight for my beliefs and being polarizing, making you wrong and me right. And I think that that's just going to not really wash very well with anyone. So be mindful during that time. All right, so let's go now to the 19th, where we have a full moon in Aquarius. And this is interesting because Aquarius rules, rebellion. It rules liberation. It rules some sort of, getting in touch with a 2.0 version of what I want to be and what can be on a cosmic level. So this is on the 19th at 11:25 a.m. Pacific time. And this is where the moon is literally, I think, reflecting the fusion of Mercury and the sun. So normally we say a full moon is the brightest phase of the moon. It's where the moon reflects the sun's light. And yet we see this Mercury retrograde. So to me, not only, so when a planet is close to the sun, it's considered combust. And yet Mercury travels the closest to the sun all the time. So here, I'm not sure that I think it's combust as much as I think that there is an awareness of how my ego, what I'm feeling this way in the sense of how my drive, my ambition, here's my everyday thoughts, my everyday responsibilities, potentially even my siblings, my cousins, being on the road, and now something's being reflected. And this is so powerful because this full moon makes an exact T-square to Uranus, 27 degrees, Taurus. The 27th degree is the Gemini degree. So we go back over here in the Gemini house and we see there's all this inflamed activity about my belief system. That while it's not directly related to the full moon, it is playing in concert with what's going on. So this moon is really reflecting something, and we're still seeing this yod. The sun is coming into this transit yod at this time. So it's a very, very potentially unexpected eruptions, emotional eruptions, feeling 1 minute, you might be able to listen to somebody jabber on about whatever their beliefs are, and then you just sort of lose your mind and you're like, I can't do this anymore. But if you have this information, we'll say Mercury's information, then you can be much more intentional about how you play this epiphany out, this revelation, this a full moon is the ending of one cycle and the beginning of another, but I think this is more a mental job. Uranus rules our genius. It rules brilliance and the expression of that. And Mercury rules the everyday mind. Jupiter rules philosophical mind. There's a lot going on here because at the same time of this full moon, now we have the exact square from Saturn to Jupiter, from both these planets, Jupiter and Mars, to Venus at 18 degrees. Big focus on beliefs, on how I'm going to show up with those beliefs, how I'm going to describe them, how I'm going to allow myself to be invalidated or not. And I think that this is really important that we pay attention to Saturn being in Pisces, because Saturn is your ruling planet, remembering that it's about coming from your heart. 17th degree is the Leo degree. Leo is your 8th house of transformation. This tense moment could be where you want to go back to old ways because they just seem easier, or go back to old conversations, or people are just being in such a way that they won't let go of the past in some way, because it's not just about what's happening in the world and in our communities. It's also about what's happening within our minds. There's a lot going on there. And I think because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, so is Gemini, and there's your ruling planet in the sign of the soul, Pisces. This is coming from your soul. And what is Neptune doing? Neptune is making these finger of God aspects to these planets, calling forth you to give your soul an opportunity to speak louder than your earthly experience, and then integrate the two. I think that's what's really the key here. Now, Saturn and Jupiter are going to square off 3 times. This is the first. The second will be in December. Jupiter will have gone retrograde. And then when Jupiter moves direct again, they will square off again. So we will feel this back coming up again in December and then in January. December obviously is the holidays, and January will be the inauguration of the new president in the United States. So this is very, very interesting and all feels very familiar historically to me. I really think these times are something we're revisiting from previous eras. All right, let's go now to the 22nd, where we'll see the sun actually as the focal point now of that yod. So here's the sun in its exact quincunx to Pluto. And I really choose the 0 degree versus Neptune's 29th degree, because the 0 degree is a new beginning. It's also a circle. Everything goes around, comes around. We are eternal beings. And here we kind of get to see if we have allowed our ego and our drive and our ambition to hold us back in some way, where we've compromised in ways that might not be authentic to our new way of being. And now we have to unravel some old systems. And I say that because we have Uranus squaring this energy, especially squaring Mercury, as Mercury is retrograding in the house of your transformation, of other people's money, of leadership, of enjoyment, of pleasure, and of interaction. Leo is a very amorous, romantic sign, and the 8th house is the house of sex. So there can even be the potential that, there's a sexual dominance of some kind. Someone has a hold on you, a spell on you, or you have a spell on someone. But it's going to come up for review. However your sun is shining, however you're projecting yourself out into the world, will be revisited or visited in this moment. And I say revisited because I think of Mercury going over this spot 3 times. So it's really the most dominant energy there. All right, let's go now to the 28th, where Mercury will go direct. This is actually going to be later in the day as well. I think I'm going to go again to 10 p.m. It seems to be a safe time for me. So now we see Mercury has gone direct, and it's going to move back into that spot in about, I don't know, in a couple, I think probably a week or 2. I don't really know. It takes 3 weeks to go through a sign. So it might be around the same time that Pluto enters your first house. We see Venus here, and she's about to enter her domicile. This is really powerful because she is approaching the supergalactic center. Libra is your 10th house of career, Capricorn, of the public eye. It's the house you naturally rule. It's a house of leadership. It's a house of government, again, authority. It's the very top of the chart. It's where we look for our career ambitions. So Venus now is entering her rulership. She is, as I said, approaching the supergalactic center. That supergalactic center is at 2 degrees, 22 minutes of Libra, and it's focused on relationships, but not relationships with other people. It's the relationship you have with yourself as source energy. It is Venus's opportunity at this time to recognize her talents and her skills and know that she can draw the resources and the money to her. But part of this tension between her and Neptune is Neptune saying, but you've got to be thinking about coming at this from a spiritual perspective, Venus. You have been very processing from a very analytical, logical place as you've been traversing through the Virgo energy. But now is a time to connect with your guides, your angels, and use them as the platform for the next step up. And through this innovation, there will be benefit. This is the trine here now that she's having with both Pluto and Uranus, is this 2.0 version, this awareness of the bigness of this vast universe that we live in. And the structures that we've created here on Earth are minute in comparison to what the universe has created and offered us in the form of tools. We just don't use them because we're trained to be powerless. So this is really super powerful. Now let's go to I'm going to go to the 31st now. I'm going to click off Venus. Okay, so now we see that Mercury has barely moved at all since the 28th. It's still at 21 degrees. And so this is a real stationing of revisiting the things. How do I stand in leadership for myself, Capricorn? How do I stand in a position that puts my wants and desires and my talents in front of an audience and feels something from my heart, while I'm also standing in a place of duty and responsibility to the things around me? We see that this particular end of the month, the most favorable aspects are the trines from Uranus to Pluto, and from Venus, who is now on the galactic center. And the South Node is approaching that supergalactic center, excuse me, not the galactic center, supergalactic center. So this too, seeing myself as source, being egoless maybe to how other people at this point are perceiving me, my 10th house. It's almost one of these things where as you transform and as you give greater life to your heart and have the courage to follow that, you will show people versus telling them how it will work. We see we've got still have this background. Well, what we don't have anymore is the square and a half to Jupiter, which is rather nice. That is kind of gone out, but now it's been replaced by Mars. And this quincunx from Mars to Pluto is another dynamic of revisiting if I'm sitting in anger, frustration, resentment, or any energies that are actually holding me back, which could be broadening my world while I'm perceiving them to be restricting my world. We do see Pluto is in a square and a half, or a half square to Saturn here. So the month ends with opportunity to feel your transformation, and yet at the same time, some of the tense aspects will not have shifted, but you may have shifted within those tense aspects. All right, my Capricorns, that's it for me for August 2024. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. If you'd like to book a reading with me, either an astrology reading or an intuitive reading, I'm available. My information is below in the description. Please join me Sunday mornings live at 11 a.m. where we look at the week ahead's transits and we do a card reading, both an angel card reading and a tarot, pull a tarot card for each sign, and we get the angel's advice for traversing the transits. In the meantime, have a fabulous August, and I hope to see you in September. Please like, please subscribe, please share. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.